To that item on housing. I'll bring that reaction to you in a little while, but I want to go to travel now because Eoghan Corry, a travel and aviation journalist, is on the line. Eoghan, good morning.
Good morning, Pat.
Now, the latest news, what's flying, who's flying, to where, which borders are open, because I believe all over Europe they've kind of opened the doors.
Kind of opened the doors sums it up. June the 15th is a big day. Margherita Schinas set out a plan from the European Commission to start getting the borders open. And yesterday was when most of the European countries opened their borders. It was a little bit untidy in places, a little bit of mixed messaging. Spain, for example, decided to open the border with Portugal without telling Portugal. But what we'll see over the next 2 weeks, Pat, is more clarification around those countries that have still not opened. And by July the 1st, and July the 1st is the next big day, and it's the date that Ryanair are putting 40% of their fleet in the sky, saying they're going to try and work all those routes that they used to have before coronavirus. By then, nearly all the borders will be down. I think we'll be down to the likes of places like Slovakia, which have a more severe lockdown. But there are about turns in that. Poland, for instance, which was one of the most locked down countries, has now virtually opened its borders.
Now, what do you think is going to happen? How much consumer resistance will there be to flying?
The big question is, will price break down resistance? When we've had a big disruption to travel before, and some people will remember 9/11, what that did for aviation for about a 6-month period, what SARS did for about a 3-month period. When we've had a big breakdown, price has been the lever that the airlines have pulled. And that's certainly what's being pulled at the moment. Ryanair are putting flights one way to Lanzarote for €56 in July. You would not get that in July. So I don't know how effective it is, because there are so many moving parts to this, Pat. The really important ones from an Irish point of view is that Leo Varadkar said on Friday people should not book flights, and that the 14-day quarantine is not being removed from now. That's where passengers returning to Ireland, it's illegal not to fill out the locator form you're given on the aircraft. It's not illegal to break a 14-day quarantine that is supposed to be imposed on people returning. I would expect that to be up for review again before July the 1st, but there certainly are a lot of things to be overcome before the consumer decides it's time to start flying in numbers again.
This imbalance between what's happening in Europe and what's happening in Ireland may present problems. Airlines flying, therefore, if you've booked with them, you can't get a refund. Also, holidays that people have booked and maybe paid a deposit on, and the operators are saying, OK, pay us the rest.
Balances, huge issue, stalking the land. People are uncertain about holidays that they booked around Christmas time for July. The terms and conditions of those holidays say you've paid the deposit. Unless you pay the rest of it, you lose your deposit. So it's a big issue. There is not an appetite for a lot of people to fly, particularly July, whatever about later in August. And it varies. I'd like to say there was sort of one fixed formula for this, but it varies completely from supplier to supplier. And the only real movement I've seen on this, Pat, watching it since March, is that suppliers have moved the final date for the balance back from the normal terms and conditions would be about 12 weeks for most suppliers, back to 4 weeks. But people are still being asked to pay up the balance, and it's not pretty out there because they're really not sure about it. And the Department of Foreign Affairs has still got that advisory against all but essential travel. That has implications for things like travel insurance.
So the travel insurance, if you're told that you can't fly unless it's essential, and you do fly, against that advice, because that's what it is, advice, they can't stop you if there's a flight leaving, does that mean your travel insurance is void?
Pretty much. Most clauses say if you travel against government advice from either the country you're travelling from or the country you're travelling to, your insurance is void. It's not that big a deal for European flights, because your European health insurance card will cover health issues in throughout Europe, the EU countries and a few more. It's a big issue. You wouldn't put a toe into America without it.
Or you missed a connection for whatever reason, or you lost a bag, and you have insurance normally for that. but your government has said don't leave the island of Ireland. Meantime, you're flying from Amsterdam to some third country and your bags go missing, or as I say, you miss your flight. Even though it's not out of Ireland, would your insurance not cover you for that particular leg?
Pretty much. If you're travelling outside of away, if you're ignoring government advice to travel, and that would also include the other major thing in travel insurance is having to cancel for some emergency, a bereavement, things like that. They're the things people claim on lost baggage. All of that is pretty much off the picture under the clauses in the travel insurance. Now, there are different other issues that might arise to haunt you as well. Flight disruption is it's an extra on a lot of people's travel insurance. It became very popular after the local ash cloud crisis in 2010.
Yeah.
But that has been ruled out for new policies under COVID-19. So down those, it's the travel insurance business is not for the weak-hearted anyway. It takes a long time to read all the way through a policy, but certainly the insurance companies cover it will be called into question, and the DFA advisory, there's no sign of that moving either. But what we are getting hints of from our politicians is that they will start removing that for particularly selected countries under an air corridor system. It's being bandied about, but has no details or not even serious discussion about it yet.
I fire a few questions at you, and they're all kind of related. My wife and I are booked to fly to Portugal in August. We're flying out of Belfast. As Irish citizens, what restrictions will we have to comply with on arrival back in Belfast? Also, my wife is very nervous about travelling. What reassurance can I give her?
None. No restrictions. You're arriving back into Belfast, and if you're arriving into Dublin, the last box you tick on that on the form, the locator form, says, are you travelling to Northern Ireland or an onward flight? If you tick that, you don't have to fill it out. The second question, though, is more important. If you pull out of the flight, it's your problem. If they cancel the flight, EasyJet cancel the flight to Faro, for example, they have to offer you compensation or get another flight option to you. The reality is that most of the Belfast flights are cancelled, but Faro seems to be one of the few that will be operating in August. That could change.
Could you ask Eoghan, what's the chance of getting a refund from Aer Lingus for flights that they cancelled on March 17? Still waiting. No luck with Aer Lingus customer service. I requested a refund, not a voucher, but still waiting. That's from Oliver. The timescale that Aer Lingus are telling us about refunds?
They haven't really given us a timescale. Ryanair have given us a timescale of 10 weeks from last week. Aer Lingus are still processing. They seem to come in jumps and starts, but you will get that refund for a flight cancelled in March.
Final question. Myself and my husband booked and paid for a weekend break in Lisbon with Abbey Travel. We were to travel in March. We've requested a full refund, but we keep being rebuffed. What are our rights? We are greatly concerned. That's from Angela in Dublin.
That's an interesting one, Pat, because the Lisbon flights flew all the way through the crisis. It depends on which of the airlines you're on. There were 3 airlines. One of them continued to fly through the crisis. So if the flight took off, your refund options are not there. What happens there is you go back to your insurance. That applies for all people who could not fly. For instance, to America, you're not let in. You're sent back to the insurance company. I do expect to play out in the courts that you will get refunds if the flight took off and you weren't on it. But if Abbey Travel Abbey Travel will be are in a position to pay refunds because they're bonded, properly securely bonded company, and it mightn't happen quickly, but you will get sorted out eventually.
But basically, if they cancelled rather than Abbey Travel or the airline cancelling, they haven't a leg to stand on.
Have not a leg to stand on, and the other
hotel was open and the airline was flying.
Even if the hotel is not open and the flight still flies, there is a leg to stand on through the travel agency bonding system. But this is really important. If the flight took off, you are treated as if it's a no-show. It doesn't make sense to listeners. It doesn't make sense to anyone. But we're in extraordinary times.
Eoghan Corry, thank you very much for joining us. Eoghan is editor of Air and Travel magazine. We'll have news up after this.
Thank you, Pat.